obviously I'm going for monkeyfish.
Do I have a choice?
No. I stole it.
Okay. Old pendulous breast herself.
Chase you through a cave. I know you do outside.
And we're going to talk about how wrong you are after this.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Monsters Lounge. I'm Jeni.
And I'm Tressa.
I'm so glad you drew that out like that.
You're welcome.
It really didn't blank everything that I was about to say.
Oh, that's weird. I feel like that's a you problem.
Listen to me. I first have a very important piece of news for everyone involved.
Mm-hmm.
All right, are you ready? Are you paying attention?
I think so. Yeah, go for it.
Listen, I just saw, now this research may have come out like a couple of years ago and I just didn't pay attention, but I'm pretty sure it's fairly recent. The megalodon shark was much bigger than they thought it was.
How big is it?
Like 90 feet.
90 feet.
Yeah, like seriously. And the body shape was a lot thinner than they originally thought. 90 feet is like 2 school buses. Like
I thought it was already pretty much that big, but
okay. It's size of 1. It's added like an entire, I don't know. Do you need me to do that again? Added.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like an entire bus there. It's almost as big as a blue whale.
Okay. Why is it almost as big as a blue whale? It's a megalodon. This thing, I've seen the documentary, The Meg. It was way bigger than 2 school buses. What are you talking about, Jeni?
This seems right, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to fool someone who has seen the documentary The Meg. Yeah.
I actually haven't seen it, but I've seen the trailer. It was way bigger than 2 school buses.
You have. I sent it to you. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. You sent it like
anyway,
10
that's
times.
Well, I really like The Meg. I'm just saying. So that's my big, exciting news for the evening.
Okay.
That's it.
Hey, you know what's trending on TikTok now? I think this is going to be my new segment for you, since you have deleted TikTok.
No, I didn't delete my account. I just said it there. Bestie Jarrett, who's been on the show before, was like, he was so startled and said, "I've been sending you videos for like 6 months."
And you never respond. Bro,
I don't.
Take a hint.
So all right, tell me, please, because this is an important news article.
I'm lying. I only saw one video about it, but people are videotaping portals appearing in their yards. Okay. They don't look at all like special effects, but like actual portals.
Wait, first of all, how do you know what an actual portal looks like?
Because I saw it I just told you, I saw it in a TikTok video. Jeni, are you not paying attention? Jesus. What am I even doing here?
Listen, there's no need to turn into a tiny little angry porcupine on this one, okay? I'm listening. I'm hearing you.
Thank you.
On your TikTok news. So lots and lots of people have been seeing these portals open up in their backyards, you say?
Yeah, like 2, I think.
2 seems like a lot.
I mean, 2 more than I'm used to seeing, I guess.
Sure. So you've hit it up on the portal side of TikTok.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. All right. It could be a slippery slope. Just saying.
Listen, I know this. I'm in for the ride.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and tell you about our guest tonight.
Would you?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Yes, I definitely will. Which I'm really excited about. You got the pleasure to meet her at a conference that we were just at the Missouri Paracon. I did not get that same experience.
Okay.
Yeah, but in looking into her for this episode, I'm highly intrigued by her books. So Erin Taylor is our guest tonight. and she has been investigating the paranormal since 2013, but has been forever fascinated since a little girl. She has a creative flair for storytelling through her nonfiction books, Sleeping Among Spirits, Unfinished Businesses, Business One, and then there's another volume, and then Strange Colorado, Volume 1 and 2. She has also been published in the Morbid Curious, Ghosted Magazine, American Paranormal Magazine, and Haunted Magazine. She also gives lectures and is a regular at paranormal conferences, as I said, where you met her just this last time. And I think she's been at a few more. Oh, I haven't met her. Anyway, so please help me welcome Erin.
Yay. Hi. Hello. Welcome.
Welcome. We're so excited to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So first of all, your books seem really, really interesting to me. And look at those. I got there eventually. And we'll get into those in a second, but I'm always very, very curious about what draws people into the paranormal, especially if they're doing investigation or if they've been in the field for a number of years. Was it a personal experience that you had, or was it more along the lines of you just got interested and followed up?
Sure. No, it's an absolute really good question. As far as I can remember, like it says in my bio, that I've always been fascinated by, the paranormal, ghosts especially. And it's like I remember being a little girl and praying to see a ghost in my corner, at the corner of my room. It's like you could just, it would be so easy just to will them. And it was always I wanted to see what I would experience.
Seems like the opposite of what most kids are praying for in their room at night.
I like it. I want to hear more.
I love it very much. I love it. But most kids are like, please make this not be a ghost that I'm hearing in my corner. I love it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I knew I would be scared. That's what I told myself. It's like, I know I'd be scared, but I really want to see one. And alas, no ghost ever showed up. I think I also didn't have the concept of what exactly a ghost was. Yeah. Or, again, that you can't just will them. But, I mean, I like a lot of, probably you guys, a lot of other people loved reading, like, the scary stories to tell in the dark, R.L. Stine, Christopher Pike. And it was just always see an old building, it must be haunted. But I didn't get into the idea of actually investigating it until about 2012, 2013, when it was, oh, hey, I can actually do what the people on TV do.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. I love that because everybody seems to be drawn into it in so many different ways and so many unique ways. So the two books that you have, The Unfinished Business, I was just kind of browsing through your title list and I looked at like Strange Colorado because that seemed to be like right up my alley, right? I'm way more of a cryptid person. So I was like, wow, that seems kind of cool. And then I started looking at The Unfinished Business and I realized that they are based on haunted restrooms.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot about that. See? Oh my God. I know. Okay. Tell us about the haunted restrooms, please.
And where this idea came from, because it's perfect. It's so good, right?
Yeah, there's water. Water means energy and electricity and all that stuff. You're going to find ghosts where there's water. And of course, they're always in the bathroom watching you do your business. They are all the time in all restrooms, everybody. Okay. Go ahead.
Right. So, I mean, it really came about just in, I guess, just random conversation, because that's just how my brain goes sometimes. It was on an investigation. It's like, why is it always the women's bathroom that's haunted? And started, just still joking about it. And I was at another Paracon in Massachusetts. I'm like, why hasn't anyone written a book on this? I'm like, you know what? Well, you know what? I will be that person, because no one ever wants to write about the place we do our business. And so it's one of those things where I'm always like, proud of it, because now I'm not who wrote about it, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, I'm that girl who wrote about it. But it's amazing how many places just that have these rooms, and it's like Tressa, you were saying, like with energy and water, but there's also, it's a place of vulnerability. And, you know, if it is the girls, we go in there, we laugh, we cry, and, you know, men's bathrooms can be haunted too. But, you know, the joke I kept telling at Missouri Paracon, because my husband kept asking everyone, why was it the women's? I said, because the boys smells, you know, whoever wants to hot in there. But even now, it's like I'm getting more stories. I thought I was done after the first book. And then all of a sudden, I got this list of more places. I went to Savannah with a friend, and there was Moon River Brewery, which is now sadly closed, the Savannah Theater. Both of them had haunted bathrooms. And so I had to do number 2, unfinished business number 2. And yeah, there's some potty humor. There's
what?
I could not resist.
How could you resist?
I mean, come on.
Yeah, there's some other working titles that just, you know, are not PG, but those were the ones that worked. But I'm slowly accumulating a list for number 3. I'm like, no one wants to go back for the 3rd, you know? So
no, they do. Yeah. They do.
Yeah, they really do. Because it's such an interesting collection, right? Like, you know, you maybe get like 1 or 2 of those in like another collection of just general hauntings in a specific area of the country, but to specifically go around, I love it so much. It reminds me of like a photography essay book that came out, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, and it was just like restrooms around the world, right? And it sold so many copies. Do you have any favorite stories from either the one that you're working on right now because they're fresh, or
do you have a coffee table book coming out about these restrooms?
And do you need people to, you know, perhaps just stand there in, I don't know, fancy dresses or anything? Because we know a couple of people.
Right.
She's talking
about it's been fun. You know, because now it's the I got to take a selfie in the haunted bathroom. Of course, never really was that girl who do the selfie in the mirror. But if it's haunted, I got to do it. And yeah, so I don't have anything. I just finished a book on the hauntings of Leadville, Colorado, and so that was with the editor. And I'm just taking a sabbatical, so it's more just swimming in my head. But as far as favorite stories, that one probably, gosh, I'm trying to think of probably one that was more personal to me. So many of the accounts were happened to a friend, or I found them online or something like that. And there was an old nightclub here in Colorado Springs called Cowboys, and it was in this like shady strip mall. I mean, it was not a real good place, but that was where the club was. And I mean, when I was a teenager, it was the only place that the teenagers could go on certain nights and dance. And pretty sad, lonely life, but it was a blast. It was so much fun. Eventually that club moved out. They went downtown, and a haunted house of all things actually moved in, and the actors in there started, having so-called activity. And eventually myself and other team members of the group I was in, we went in, investigated, and ended up just, it seems like residual energy. It seems like there's still a club going on, and nothing would ever be active, but there would be talking and noise. And so anyway, the bathroom. So in there, doing my thing, right? This is a place where actors had said there was always like the 3rd, 5th, and last stall. So naturally I had to investigate all those stalls. And there was one other investigator. She's way up front. I mean, it's not that, it's a big bathroom. She's washing her hands, the water's running, and I hear a female's voice. I'm like, what'd you say? She wasn't talking. She pretty much, acted like I had just made up everything. And so that one was cool, because usually I am not that girl who gets to hear disembodied whatevers. I'm the one who usually things happen to, like, right after I left the room.
Right.
And so to have that happen, it's like, okay, cool. Well, there is actually something, something in this. But yeah, that building ended up closing down, and I don't know what they're doing with it. The haunted house moved into a new building, and so then the next people who move in will probably have a nice surprise. But
yeah,
it seems like there's so many of these hauntings that are always like in theaters and hotels and just everywhere.
At least every business that moves out of that space is thriving, apparently, because they're moving on to bigger and better things. Maybe it's all just like girls in the bathroom helping each other. You know what I'm saying? That's what we do.
All right. I enjoy that you had that experience, because I too am never the person that hears anything. Okay, granted, I don't actually investigate or do really much of anything. But whenever I'm in somewhere where people see shadows or hear things, I'm always like, I'm fine. I'm just gonna walk over here. Like nothing's going on. So I very much enjoy that you had that experience. It's pretty rad. So also the Strange Colorado is filled with all kinds of cool legends and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you have any favorites from that?
So the one that always gives me the absolute chills. So I went and I personally investigated all of these places. I didn't want it to just be an urban legend where I'm just writing stories. I wanted to go and actually be in the story. And so I got the pleasure of renting the highway of Pikes Peak, America's Mountain. And like we all know, America the Beautiful is where Catherine Lee Bates, she wrote, not Kathy Bates, but America the Beautiful was written on the top of the mountain. But it is hairpin turns, and it has a phantom hitchhiker that is on there. And so I got the pleasure of being able to rent the highway, which I think was a first. They liked my project. Usually they just rent it out for like the Fast and the Furious movie productions or Pikes Peak Hill Climb. And the story is, so just the legend is back in the 1970s, a worker was coming down. He was on his motorcycle. He stopped at Glen Cove Inn at mile marker 13 to have a smoke. A woman showed up nude and she looked really scared. He said, "Hey, do you want to ride somewhere?" She gets on the back of the bike. He hands her jacket. They ride down. They're almost to the toll gate. She hops off, gives him back his jacket, runs back up the mountain. He's like, okay, that's really weird. But he goes on. He gets home and he reaches into his pocket, and there is a receipt from the 1930s from Glen Cove Inn. Her name is, they call her Desperation Mona. And this was based off of a young woman named Nona Roberts, who was on her honeymoon and just gotten, basically she was driving down from the top of the mountain, mile marker 13. The car goes off the road. She's really injured. Husband is fine. She dies 3 weeks later of a brain aneurysm. Okay, you would think end of story. Well, her ghost kept showing up on the road. Her husband ended up being a multiple wife killer. And it wasn't until she was the wife number 5, and wife number 7, she also died in similar ways. And the LA police were like, "Hey, didn't someone in Colorado?" So they tied it together. He was getting life insurance, and then they would die. A couple of these women were smart, and they said, "No, I'm not doing life insurance," and they pieced out. But he was the last man hung at San Quentin. And
wow.
Yeah, he was, I mean, like the whole unraveling of things that just like transpired is, yeah, he was this horrible, horrible guy. And she was just this young lady who just thought she was in love.
Oh, don't do that, ladies.
Oh, no. Yeah.
I don't care for that.
The good news is, we didn't find her ghost. We found someone else who was responding to the name Helen, but there's no documentation of any woman named Helen.
Really?
But she was active, and yeah, she was super chatty. But so
what does that mean exactly? What was she telling you guys? Was she just like, hey, I'm here? Or is she like, so this is the guy that killed me. This is how he did it.
Here's where he lives.
Yeah, she threw she threw bricks of soap like downstairs in the gift shop while we were there. I mean, she was really active with the REM pod. It was actually, considering no one had done an investigation in there, she knew how to act.
Yeah, good for her.
Yeah,
so living her best afterlife.
Why not? She's secluded on the mountain.
Yeah, you got to entertain yourself somehow. Listen, when I met you at Missouri, we talked briefly, and part of that brief conversation was about mental health in the paranormal, and I want to get into that right after this.
For those of you naysayers, I want you to know how much I appreciate how many of you grabbed a hold of my small package after last week's show. It is out and available. You can get both of my books, The Other Side, A Guide to the Paranormal and Ghost Hunting, and my brand new book, Theater of the Mind, Tales from the Darkness. Both books are out. One, of course, kind of a how-to ghost hunt book, and the other story book of strange supernatural occurrences all around the world. You can get your hand on my small package by just ordering it right off of my website. You can go right to paranormal60.com, scroll down on the front page there, or go to the shop and scroll down and you'll see our book bundle. And I was so humbled by the fact of how many men put their hands on my small package at the end of last week's show and bought it. It was great. It made me feel loved and wanted. I'm not going to lie.
Okay, settle down.
Yeah. Well, obviously, it's a conversation that needs to be had with a lot of tact, right? Because you start talking about mental health, and everybody kind of gets either defensive. or kind of automatically assumes what anybody's talking about. I mean, it could just be something as simple as, for me, having like the tiniest background of working in the mental health field. I'm always first and foremost, I hear some of these stories and of like either, especially with like the alien abductions or like the aliens, anything of this really. And I go, okay, but how are you feeling now? Like that it's so much to take on. There's so many things life realizations that happen when someone has an experience, not to mention when somebody goes into sort of a negative space, right? So there's that aspect to it. And then you hear, what was it? Like Christina Rake, I think, was giving a lecture at one point and talking about how a lot of like demon reports, maybe like she would get called out on a lot of exorcisms, and she would go through all of the possibilities of what something could be before she did.
I feel like if we talk about mental health in the paranormal, it's usually around exorcisms or negative spirits or something, and it's not brought into a larger part of the conversation. So what's going on with that?
That's okay. Now, being privy to this conversation that you guys had before, what specifically, Erin, were you guys, not specifically, what were you guys kind of talking about in that situation?
Oh, honestly, there was so much going on. I don't remember exactly our conversation, but it was more yeah. I think it was more along the lines of that's what I've presented on before. And it's something that I'm really passionate about because I'm a licensed therapist in Colorado, and I've been doing that actually longer than I have been investigating. And there were times where I would see things and red flags, and my spidey senses were and I'm trying so hard to keep my mouth shut. And for the longest time, I didn't even want people to know I was a therapist because there's a stigma that we're always therapizing and diagnosing and stuff. I'll tell you, we don't have time for that. Like, it's like my boundaries are my boundaries, but then when it starts mixing in, then it becomes more of, that elimination. But that so many people, or there, I mean, I can't generalize, but like there are people who are more inclined to say it's demonic or it's paranormal before admitting that it's something else, because they want so much for like that either to be special or the stigma with mental health. There was a survey that said that 69% of Americans believed that or believed in the paranormal, but yet it was under 50 of people who were actively seeking mental health treatment.
That sounds right.
So looking at that clarification, or like looking at that gosh, my brain is not working. It has been a long day. But looking at those statistics, I mean, it definitely, you can see where it lies in that, I've had residential cases. Ever since COVID, stopped doing those, but always ask, has this been ruled out by medical or mental health? And usually those who said, no, it's none of those, kind of gave me my answer. I'm not saying that they all are, but like my aim is not to tell people that everything is mental health. It's more of, hey, let's look at other options. Is it something else that's going on? And so I take it very lightly. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm sorry. I did not mean to interject. It makes sense a lot. Makes sense a lot. Words are good. It makes a lot of sense to do that as well, because you already kind of have the idea of looking at the physical location as, well, what else could it possibly be, right? Like, is it a draft? Is it super old pipes? Is it, what have you? There's always like those questions involved. And a lot of times when we talk to investigators, those are things that they mention and discuss. So it's interesting that the stigma is so heavy that it's not one of the first questions asked in that same vein of what else could this possibly be? Right? So yeah, that's got to be absolutely fascinating to pull that apart. Now, like, I don't want to ask like about specific cases, obviously, because that's going to be ridiculous, and that's going to be talking about somebody as if they're here. Okay. Do you think that how is the issue of I am not putting this together well at all. Did the chicken or the egg come first, right? Do you ever have those experiences where perhaps somebody was suffering with something at the onset, or happened maybe after their experience?
Right. So I think I understand what you're asking, looking at when did the activity start versus everything else. And so the nice thing is with a lot of mental health disorders, when you're looking at like schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, bipolar, that a lot of those start off when a person is around like 15 years old. Usually onsets between 15 and 25. Now, there can be cases where they're younger. I work with adults, but who are, of course, once kids. And so there are a set of diagnoses that kiddos can get, and sometimes with, untreated, that those can evolve into something more. Sometimes genetics plays a part. And so looking at those considerations, looking at when did the activity start versus, when were other stuff happening. Now, this person could tell you, well, I've always had a ghost talking to me. And then it's looking at, well, where does the ghost talk to you? Is it only in one place? Because with psychosis, that should be everywhere. But, it's trying to look at what correlates. That was the word I was trying to find before, and I stumbled all over. But if you have someone who maybe they haven't had any mental health treatment, or they've been relatively stable, and then they have an occurrence that happens, that one can be interesting. Not to say though that trauma can happen at any time in someone's life, and those symptoms can definitely influence paranoia, hyperalertness, poor concentration, nightmares. And so it's such a deep dive, really. It's something that I also want to be, again, I tread very, very lightly on this because I'm not there to diagnose people, but it's more of what else could cause activity. I will say, for general things that I have encountered, it's more or less just looking at even culture, where culture might be that, so and so is hearing voices, but it's not, it's the ancestors, and so they're going to go to the church, and the church is going to fix it, or that the voices are ancestors, and then they're okay. So I mean, it goes so broad. I feel like I could probably spend hours upon hours looking at that. So to answer your chicken and the egg, it's more or less, when was that onset? When did it start becoming bothersome? Also, were there other things that were going on in the person's life? Like we know sometimes that stress can induce some activity, conflict, crisis, for whatever reason, spirits and mental health, that it's like fuel for activity and those feelings. And so looking at a timeline. I'm kind of going this way and that way, aren't I?
No, it's totally fine. I threw you kind of a very general and vague question. So no, very well answered, I feel like. Yeah, and it's such it's a topic that I think that we're all sort of just very being very careful around, right? Because you don't want to offend somebody, and you certainly don't want to discredit anybody's story or anybody's experience, because the fact of the matter is, none of us can ever know exactly what it is because we're not them, right?
Right. And we also don't want to take it back to where it was, where anything paranormal that you said out loud that you experienced, you were mocked and made fun of. We're not going back there. We're just exploring all the options.
Yeah.
Well, if you
go ahead.
I was just going to say, Tressa reminded me, it's like if you say something about mental health versus you see ghosts, look at the dawn of spiritualism, and where it was perfectly okay for all people to be raising the veil, talking to the dead, having seances. But yet, in the meantime, we had people who were in asylums and people who were basically being tortured because they were not acting what society called as normal.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting too, because it's a topic that we sort of tread around lightly, and very, very carefully. If I could say that like one more time about treading this, I'm going to put that disclaimer like 15,000 more times in the rest of the episode. Cool. But, because from my very limited experience with being around some of these like ghost hunts and whatnot at conventions, we're going to asylums and we're going to places where the very fact that it's being haunted is credited to extraordinary stress or mental illness. Right? So like having it sort of swing both ways, you know, caused by the haunting is caused by, or the haunting is seen because of, you know, it's wild to me, that we don't talk about it a little bit more, just simply because we credit hauntings to that sometimes.
But on the other end.
Right. Exactly. And those asylums, man, like I've been in one twice. No, not like.
All right.
I mean, on the ghost hunts, and it
was,
yeah, the Sheboygan Asylum, and like the rooms that people were talking about getting the most activity were the rooms where people were treated the worst, right? So we've all kind of grown to accept that, and those places were just so scary and so sad.
Sad, yeah.
Yeah. Really and truly. I have a question for you. Tressa, do you want to go into commercial before this or after this?
A vampire in Rhode Island?
A UFO crash in Connecticut?
A flying moose in Maine?
A haunted bridge that calls your name?
New England is weird.
Really weird.
Wicked Strange by Jeff Belanger and Frank Grace is your ticket to the bizarre. Ghosts, monsters, urban legends, and roadside oddities you won't believe until you see them.
So pre-order now on Amazon. It drops September 2nd.
Assuming the Black Dog of West Peak doesn't get you first.
Let's get strange.
Wicked Strange. Pre-order your copy now on Amazon.
All right. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of my personal sort of experience into this a little bit. So stay tuned. So I deal with depression, and I have periodically throughout my life, you know, and it's just something that periodically I'll go through. Usually it's seasonally brought on, right? Like so many people's. But I find that that's kind of how I got very interested in some of the high strangeness stuff, and certainly some of the cryptids, right? I would find things that kind of brought me a little bit of joy and just sort of take off with them, you know, and it was very, very interesting to me. What about, have you ever noticed, or do you have any observations on what the paranormal community can kind of do for people who deal with things like depression or anxiety?
I think I'm not following what you're asking with that one. I mean, I think I know, but.
Have you seen positive, or just in your observations, positive reactions to people who maybe aren't dealing so well with life, and then they come into this? And have you had any thoughts regarding that? Am I making myself any more clear by being extra vague?
Right. No, I think I'm understanding that. I mean, the community that I've seen, I mean, it's big, but it's also small at the same time. And so I have seen that, you know, the community that comes together for supporting, you know, if like one person is sick, or someone goes to the hospital, or someone has a loss, just any of those things where there is an outpouring of love. But then I've also seen the other side of it, where it is also the bullying. It's also the attacking, and which we know that that's not going to be very good for mental health either. But, you know, as far as like when it comes down to, I don't think mental health is really talked about so much. It's just more maybe that's when like the vague booking happens, when someone's feeling such a way. But I don't know. I mean, what if we did? Does that discount us anymore as investigators or researchers? You know, to admit, you know, myself included. I mean, I've got to take medicine to help me, and that's just stabilization. And I bet there's so many people who are, but it's no different than, someone taking insulin or someone taking
100%.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it kind of does. It's yeah, for sure. And then again, yeah, exactly what you said. Like, why isn't it discussed a little bit more in more clear terms? Like, why are we so very afraid to reveal those things about ourselves?
Yeah, does it make people any less special if they're having these experiences and there's that fear of, well, what if it's all in my head?
Yeah. We know so little about a lot of this stuff, especially like, you know, I don't know. I don't know if every single person who says that they can read tarot can read tarot. I don't know if every single person out there who says I'm a medium is a medium. I have no idea. But I do know that some of the people that I've met who have said these things have something going on, right? Like it's too much to deny. You know, and how is that tied in? There's so little known about the brain and like the connections of those things. How does that go into the mental health or like the sensitivity to experiencing things? You get into the yeah, we're gonna do that too, the autistic side of it.
Okay. Right, because
I should have said something.
Listen, we're going to get into it. Let's get into it. Because, yeah, there's a lot of pattern recognition, I feel like, is a big part of a lot of people's abilities. And that's not so much supernatural as recognizing patterns. And I'm not putting that on anybody. I'm not saying that's the case all the time. But I feel like a lot of it is like, well, I mean, I can just, it's right there. We've played this game before. It's okay. So I just had to put my 2 cents in. Okay, go ahead.
Or there's that aspect to it. Are there any more observations about that sort of thing before we sort of end that subject and move into maybe tie everything up with maybe some more stories?
Sure. You know, the way I present it is, I think it's pretty, general that people want to feel special. They want to feel unique. And I'm not saying not all people. Some people like, being underneath the radar and doing all that. But also, if people have had something going on, do they want to admit that something is wrong with them? Is this a sense of control too, that if I can talk to dead people, but yet I had all this stuff that happened to me, but this is what's good. And if someone comes in and says, oh, well, no, that's a result of this trauma, you just took away something special of mine. Yeah. And that's where unfortunately, I've seen that. And, within upsurging. And so, anyone with personal experiences, I will never discount personal experiences. I've had my own. Yeah. I gaslight myself, and so did I just make that up? But it's also still looking at, well, could there have been anything else? Right? We're so easy to say, well, it was a creaking board. It's an old house. It's drafty. This or that. But yet, if there's something else going on, it can be fixed. Well, I can't say it can always be fixed, but it can be treated. And I was once asked, like, what's the difference between someone who hears voices and someone who's like a medium? It's like, well, what does medication do? And that's going to be, if someone's having psychosis, medication will likely reduce that and eliminate that. Right. But if it's something else, medication's not going to be effective.
Point taken.
Yeah, very much so. Seems like a difficult test to propose.
Yeah. Yeah, if they're not willing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not so much.
All right, we're almost it's almost time to wrap up. Give us one good juicy one of your favorite stories. Or
give us a couple. Let's get back into a little bit.
Let's get into the fun stuff.
Yeah. First, of course, if anybody's ever struggling with anything, please reach out to.
Thank you, Jeni.
My social media, I'm a dummy, so I'll just connect you with other people. Tressa, of course, or Monsters Lounge. Any of us would be happy to hear from you and try to direct you towards.
I will direct you towards Jeni, and she will direct you towards.
And I will do a lot of research and then direct you towards the right places.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do want to say that, but please. Let's get into some weird stuff.
I was going to say, too, just adding it up, throwing it out there, 988 is really good if there's ever a crisis.
Yes.
Easy number to contact. Call or text.
Thank you.
But, yeah, so going into stories, it's like asking a mother what's her favorite, who's her favorite child, because they're all got different caused me to ponder on this. Thanks. I guess I don't really. Okay. Well, one of my favorite places that I have, speaking of, an asylum poorhouse, one of my favorite places is Ashmore Estates in Illinois, and I had the pleasure of going out with my buddy a couple years ago to help him on his book. And, I felt so comforted there. There's saying, like, some call it home is actually the name of the book by Richard S. Depp. And I didn't want to leave. Part of me was like, I don't believe in reincarnation, but if I did, I'm pretty sure I lived there. But at night, that place was wild. First off, I loved it because the activity would generally end around 1 a.m. I'm one of those investigators that I'm now getting older, and I like going to bed at a normal time, a decent time.
Just in time to get some sleep. That's great.
Yeah, we were thinking all of them just love to be up all night. So thank you for normalizing reasonable bedtimes.
Oh yeah, I love that. Yeah. And so so we'd go sleep in the nice toasty cabins, and then we'd go back because they were active during the day and it was fabulous. But the third floor was where they had the psychiatry patients, and there were like little pebbles being tossed about. Our proximity reader, the REM pod, that kept going off. We're in the dark, and there's like a totally different energy. But at the same time, while I felt that skin crawling, I just still didn't have that feeling of retreating. And so the next time I went there was a year ago in March, and we were helping out on a public investigation with Richard and MJ Dixon, and my husband had gone somewhere. He left to go to up the stairs or something, and I was downstairs going to meet up with the group who was in the cafeteria. And as I'm walking by myself, I hear Erin, and it sounds like my husband when he's annoyed with me. And I turn around and I'm giving this like, what? Look, and there's no one there. He was upstairs. And that was like the coolest thing. Because again, I'm that person who doesn't hear the disembodied voices.
But apparently you do a lot.
And meanwhile, I was asking Robin, I was like, you got that on camera? I would love to see my facial expression because it's more of a what the heck? Like, what? And expecting to see him there annoyed with me, but no, apparently maybe I annoyed the ghosts. I don't know, but it was kind of cool to see that they knew my name.
I like that. That's a good one. That's a very good one. I have a question about Colorado, Red Rocks, right? What's the story there?
Well, they had a UFO a year ago. That one was.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I had seen something about that, and then, but apparently, that's why I wanted to know, because apparently there's like a history there, right?
Well, I mean, it's always been an amphitheater.
Yeah.
And where it was called Garden of the Angels, but then like the name was competing with down in Colorado Springs, we have Garden of the Gods. And so they ended up changing it, and it's been a natural, I mean, it's a huge park, but the amphitheater itself, it is where like the greats of the greats have ever played, except for Britney Spears, who said like the stage was too small. But everyone else, you know, like including the Beatles, had been on that stage. And so there's been a lot of deaths that have happened on property. There have been, because people who like to imbibe, like with drugs and alcohol, then they decide to trespass and climb up the rocks, and then they fall off and die. I think there was at least 7 that I can recall off the top of my head of deaths just right there in the park. But that is not who is said to be haunting it. There's said to be Native Americans who are haunting the trading post gift shop, where staff will walk in and there's things knocked around. There's a ghost of a miner, because why not? Because we had like 1,500 mines. And he just chills. He doesn't bother anyone. And then there's the hatchet lady. And
right. The hatchet lady, she was actually living on that property, correct?
Okay. Yes.
Tell.
She was living with her husband down by the river. And of course they wanted her to move out. And she refused. But somehow along the line, she's buried on site. There's a cemetery in Red Rocks Park. Her story became then the hatchet lady. Now, she never did anything, but the story is that she's kind of like the Lover's Lane hook man, where if couples are hooking up in the park, she will come up and chase them down with a hatchet.
Fair. Who doesn't want to do that?
Oh, good God.
He's just, she's all about just like, safe hands, things like that, I guess. But yeah, so I don't know if this woman, and I apologize, her name escapes me. Mrs. Johnson, that's her name. And if she's just, her name is just being, thrown into the mix. But yeah, no, she did live down by the river, and she didn't want to move when they were doing all that. Apparently she was a character.
I mean, they basically are like, hey, we want this space now, leave. Right. And she's like, I don't want to do that.
I might get hatchet mad too. I don't know.
Yeah, especially if there's people making out on my property. Get out of here.
That would definitely skyrocket. Hatchet mad.
Yep.
Yeah. Now that whole place is absolutely, it's amazing. I recommend anyone go catch a show. We just saw Steve Martin and Martin Short, their tour last year. It was definitely weird to be in somewhere that's like supposedly so haunted while Steve Martin's playing the banjo.
Weird or wonderful? Yeah, did he come out and chase him with an axe?
People would probably think it's hysterical, because he was the guy who had the arrow through his head.
Exactly. It's just a new tool. It's fine.
Totally.
All right, we got to wrap this up. Erin, do you have anything you want to plug? Any websites or anything? Tell us the name of your books again.
Sure. So I have 5 books out. Everything is available on Amazon. I do self-published. So I have, my first book is Sleeping Among Spirits, where I documented 15 locations, 20 nights of haunted locations where it was purposely sleeping at them, of course, with documenting as well, just to push that part of vulnerability, right? Just like the bathroom. But yes. I mean, there's places in there. There's Squirrel Cage Jail. There's Hinsdale House, Sally House, Malvern Manor. I mean, a whole bunch of really, really cool, unique places I got to sleep at. Because again, remember, I'm old. I like to sleep. And unfinished business 2. Of course, they're about the haunted restrooms and bathrooms. And then Strange Colorado Volume 1 and Strange Colorado Volume 2, which were all about the odd and the interesting facts and stories of Colorado. And I will probably be working on a third one soon enough. And then Haunted Leadville will be out through History Press, and that will be in September of this year. But I am on Instagram. I am also on Facebook. And Blue Sky. Keep neglecting that one. But eventually I will have a website put together.
Fantastic. Erin, such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for all the stories and knowledge.
Thank you.
Everybody else!
Okay, there it is.
You can find us on the socials, on our podcast website, monstersloungepodcast.com. Buy our merch, email us, tell us we're pretty and stuff. Until next week, thank you for joining us. Goodbye!